everything up until this point, I think I saw doing TMS. I've seen people complain like it's like a jackhammer on their head, but I don't think I ever saw anyone who developed, after 3 or 4 treatments, like straight up confusion.
Yeah, and when I got home, I told my wife, I was like, you have to drive me. I can't drive anymore. It doesn't feel safe, right? I was losing my ability to multitask. I feel like I learned this material really well. I probably read like over 700 pages worth of non-biased information from doctors that practice prolonged fast. Joseph, I did not eat for 23 days.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Was that the target, or was that just when you were kind of had to be peeled off the floor, from starvation? So hi, James. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You're actually going to be the first one that we've ever interviewed about a TMS injury. It's kind of like this forgotten group of, I guess, I'm going to say psychiatric system victims, and I've actually never spoken to anyone before, and so I'm really excited to hear your story. And I think probably a good way to kick it off is if you just talk to us about a little bit of the background. How'd you end up getting TMS, and then just walk us through it from there?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Joseph.
Yeah.
So I was a business professional and at a big corporation, so it wasn't a very warm and fuzzy kind of environment. It was like a production environment. And I kind of worked my way up at this large company. And
were you in banking at the time, or was it doing? Okay, yeah. I was in banking. My whole career ended up being in banking, which maybe I'm lucky, maybe I'm not, but it was it was almost 15 years. And So I worked for quite a while, and the stress eventually kind of built up, and I really didn't know. I figured, you just work as hard as you can for as long as you can. But the stress built up over the years. I kind of repressed it and stuff. And then I ended up having to go out of work because I kind of had this breakdown where I just couldn't function. All the stress kind of poured into me at once. And then a doctor took me out, and he actually gave me Lexapro. And there'll be these little recurrent themes of how things went wrong, and I didn't recognize them at the time. But when I first took Lexapro, I actually had akathisia, inner akathisia, and I had no idea what it was. So I was just constantly panicking and freaking out just from taking this minimum dose of Lexapro. And so I kept calling my doctor, and I mean, you're probably familiar with how it goes with people going through this. I kept calling my doctor because I just couldn't sit still. I couldn't let it go that something was horribly wrong. Mm-hmm. And then he kept being like, you can't just come into my office, we'll schedule an appointment for 3 or 4 days from now or whatever. And I was like, okay, I'm just going down there. So I just went down there, and I got accosted by the nurse, but I was like, no, I need him now. I was lucky he was a good doctor, because he was actually like, okay, I can see it's really bad. Come in and see me. I'll talk to you. So I went and talked to him, and he gave me this whole spiel about how well the drug had worked for certain family members of his. And I believed him, I trusted him, but it was clear to me at that interaction, he's basically just go home and calm down. And I was like, no, this isn't going to work. So then I went and saw a psychiatrist, because I thought their help would be more adequate, right? And they would know what they're doing, as opposed to a GP that I had seen. So that's how I landed in psychiatry. Mm-hmm. And they gave me Buspar, which mellowed me out and resolved the akathisia at that time. And I continued on both, but I was just a zombie. I had never fallen asleep at work before, never, not even close. And I literally would go into work and lay down my head for a second and wake up 30, 45 minutes later, at my desk. And this may be like a total stereotype of bankers from just my experience in general psychiatry. But when all of this was happening, were you on any stimulants like Adderall, or were you smashing 10 cups of coffee a day? It seems to be a type. I don't know if that was in the mix as well when this breakdown happened.
No, that's a really good. Okay. So at that time, I've always been a pretty healthy guy. I'm like, hey, if you want to feel good, just exercise and eat well, and you'll be fine, right? And it's worked for me in the past. But for a little while before that, I had started drinking energy drinks, and I drink 2 Monsters a day, or a couple Red Bull or whatever. And then I was having these horrible crashes, and I finally had given it up maybe a year or two before that. So at the time, I actually
wasn't doing anything. I was actually pretty clean and trying to be healthy, but that depiction is not far off from where I was a few times.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. So carry on. So it sounds like, so you're on Buspar, things seem to be settling down. You're a bit sedated, and I guess that was it for a while until you had your second run in, or was there kind of more going on?
Yeah. Just as an interesting side point. So my doc's like, hey, you're going to have to be on this for at least like a year or more. So just relax, just take the stuff. And like after a few months, I was like, no. So, and I was like, he's going to be pissed, right? Cause he was kind of a really controlling or guiding figure, how you want to look at it. And I don't really go that way. I was like, I make my own decisions, but I was in a desperate spot. So I knew cold turkey was probably a bad idea. So I think I was like having the pills for a while, and then I was just done. And I went in to see him one day. I was like, hey, I stopped taking this like a couple weeks ago, and he was really pissed. But he let me go. I started having brain lightning. So like I had the shocking sensations in my brain, and I was really tired for a few months, but I had read online that it would go away. And at the time I didn't know how significant it was. I was like, okay. So at about the 3-month mark, I was like pretty much fine. I was like, I don't have the brain lightning anymore. My energy's returned. I'm fine. I think I carried an injury from that on because I went back to work not during that process, and I had more stress, and I think I carried that injury. But so that was my first run-in. Interesting sidebar. And then I think it was about 7 years later, I had a recurrent like depressive, anxious stuff. I was anxious for so long, I became depressive, essentially, is what it was. And I went to see a doc, and I was trying to exercise and eat well, and the doc, I took the PHQ-9, and the doc was like, hey, I see you're depressed. Do you want to try to do something about that? It was just a regular visit, a regular checkup. And I was like, I'm not interested in taking meds. I did that. It went really bad. Not interested. And he's like, okay, that's fine. But there's this treatment called transcranial magnetic stimulation that it can't hurt you. There's no possibility of harm, he was a believer. So he was like, this treatment, it doesn't harm anybody, but it permanently puts you in your depression in remission. Like it alters your brain in such a way to where you'll never be depressed again. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, that doesn't seem possible, but I also saw him as a really good doctor. He was a DO and not an MD. He was very much into physical medicine. And so like I paused and I was like, maybe he knows something I don't know. And I was like, okay, tell me more. And so he's like, look at these certain devices. They've been doing it at the VA forever. He's saying all the right things to me. So, and he's like, so if you're interested, then, we'll meet back in a week, and then you tell me and we'll figure it out or whatever. Right. So he sends me home with all these hit words, like, that I can go and look up, these search terms, basically go look up online, and I don't find anything bad. I find these great stories about it. And it's funny knowing what I know now and looking at that and then remembering what I was looking at, like it's telling you all these things about TMS, but none of them are really descriptive, right? Like nothing is really telling you what TMS is or how it really works. It's just like, they just pass a magnet through your head. They say magnet, they don't say electromagnet, which is impossible, right? You have to have an electrical field with a magnetic field. They say we use a strong magnet, to shift the neurons in your brain and to make them active again, right? And shocking neurons, I think, makes them active, even though it damages them. So like part of it's true, but right. And but the lens I'm seeing it through is like, wow, this really makes sense. This is amazing. Like they just basically turn on this.
It was how it was taught to me as well. It's this safe non-drug intervention is really how they sell it.
Absolutely. So that's emphasized, obviously. And then like from a kind of functional perspective, it made a lot of sense. They're like, this part of your brain's not functioning, you're depressed, right? So it's just off, right? The happy part of your brain kind of, and then we stimulate it so it turns on and your neurons can fire there again. So then you're happy. And there was this part of me that was like, wow, this makes perfect sense. Like technology's kind of catching up to medical science and what we know about the brain. So we get to be on like this cutting edge of of resolving like really negative mental health or negative mental health ruts or, you know, or something.
And if I think about like what I was told, because I've done TMS before, like as a practitioner, you know, I've been in the room when my attending was doing it. I think I did it for 3 months. The only thing I remember him saying about it was that it can cause headaches. And that was the only thing I remember hearing. And that it can be uncomfortable a little bit, you know, when you're actually receiving the treatment, that can cause some scalp discomfort. Yeah. Which is time limited and temporary. And I mean, was that sort of similar in terms of like how the risks were told to you at the time, or did you get maybe, I don't know, a more comprehensive explanation of what could happen?
No, that's exactly what's out there, and that's exactly what's kind of parroted. And I went back and looked up, like, well, after I was hurt, I got really into informed consent, and I realized, oh, if they didn't warn me about these harms, I might be able to bring a suit or something. So I went back and looked up my consent form, and it said even less than what you said, I think. I think it only said there's a small risk of like headache. And that was the only thing on the consent form. Scalp discomfort was the other one. And I think that's it.
That's all I remember. So, all right. So tell us what happened to you? Because you do a series of TMS treatments. I mean, you might do like 3 to 4 a week for a period of time. Like how many did you have? When did you start having problems? I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Great question. And I mean, again, some people kind of focus on their own injury. I tend to be like macroscopic and step back and see all these similarities. I see so much in common with med use and even my own med use and other treatments when I was going through this TMS process. So I went in, and of course the ladies in there they're fantastic. They're like so kind and warm. Like they believed in the treatment. They had gotten the treatment themselves, right? And you go back into that maybe that picture you had of like a banker, maybe being like clever and like overactive and like hardworking, right? So I'm going in them, I'm asking them the whole time, the workers, I'm like, is this real? Like, is this real? Like, does this really work? You know, tell me what you really think. Like, you know, off the record, you know, I was really trying to probe them to get more information out of the situation so I could make a good decision. And they really swore up and down, like off the record, on the record, like it's great, you can't get hurt, like all this stuff. So I know they really believed it, and they were genuine people. I don't have any reason to believe that they were being dishonest in any way. So yeah, so now I'm like, man, I did all my due diligence as much as I possibly could. And so the only thing left to do is to do it. And so I sit down, I go in there.
Let me ask you this kind of before jumping into it. When you look back at the stresses in your life, like I know you mentioned, you know, anxiety spills over into depression. I mean, was there a lot of shit going on in your life at the time? Was it, you know, you're kind of like finding yourself in your career or relational problems? I mean, you know, you can only share as much as you want to, but I always think it's, you know, you ended up in a position where they were putting like electromagnets, you know, on your brain and doing this kind of stuff. But I always wonder, like, did anyone ask about like, hey James, like what was going on that kind of puts you in this anxious state where you eventually crashed into a depression? And maybe we'll have a look at that. I mean, was that part kind of looked into at all or brought up?
No, it's a great question. And I think it's really important to look at the solution, what your potential solutions would have been to your problem, right? And again, why am I sitting in a chair and they're putting this big monstrous thing on the side of my head and turning it on, and I'm going through this discomfort? Like, why would I accept that as a reasonable alternative? And so for me, my family's always been fantastic. I'm so lucky, and I am not messing around. Like, I don't deserve my family. They're so rad and so supportive. And even my wife was like, I don't think this is a good idea. It's too good to be true. And because she couldn't really materialize an argument, like we went ahead with it and she supported me, but she felt uncomfortable. So being that my family's so rad, I felt like I really needed to do my job and to work hard and to be successful at work, which I think a lot of people, like that's a simple motive and it's simple enough. But so my mistake was not like compromising
my professional integrity, I guess, for the sake